Hi apprentices. Hey mavens. Today I'm going to attempt to put this cross stitch, which I finished literally years ago, into this frame. First thing I need to do is figure out exactly how big I need this to be, because I have a frame, obviously my cross stitch, and I have backboard according to the package, and I'm going to cut it down to the size of this frame. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the back. Ooh, this is really easy. Is there another one under there? Oh, that's it. Okay. Take that off, and I take off the little paper insert. Now, if you don't want to use one of these backboards, you certainly don't have to. You can use cardboard. Just make sure it's like really, really thin. Like you really don't want it to be thick at all. So maybe like a layer or two of cereal box would work. I don't know, give it a shot. I'm gonna use this as a template because it seems to fit in here pretty well. Just remember, if you have anything that's too thick for your board, it's gonna raise it up too much, and there's a little slot inside most frames where where the closure hook things have to sit. So if you raise it up too much, it's no longer going to fit properly in here. So first thing I'm going to do is cut this down to size. I'm going to get my stuff out of the way. I am protecting my table with a rotary cutting mat. Where did my thingy go? Oh, there it is. I'm just going to use the little thing that it comes with as a template. You probably can't even see where that ends, can you? That's okay, I got you. All right, and I'm just gonna use this as a template. Okay. Get off of there. Go on, get. There you go. I'm gonna use my ruler. I have an X-Acto blade, and I also have an awl that I'm going to use. Now the awl I'm going to use to just score a line in here to make it easier for the blade, and I don't want that to slip. By the way, I have no idea what you're supposed to do with cross stitches. This is just what I do with them. So, you know, mileage may vary, right? So, and I'm just gonna score this. If I go in here with my X-Acto knife, it should be a little bit easier for that to stay on target. I'm also going to use the ruler as well. And I'm not pressing very hard at the moment. I'm just letting it glide along the paper and letting it do the work itself. Ooh, almost there. There we go. That's one. And my second cut. There we go. All right, that's number two. Now I'm just going to verify that it does actually fit in here. Perfect. Okay, and the fact that it's wiggling around a little bit is a good thing, because you do need to account for the thickness of this. Now, if this doesn't work, I'm gonna have to cut it down a little bit, slightly smaller, just to make sure. All right. Oh, I forgot my thread. Be right back. So I went and grabbed an embroidery floss that is not one of my favorite colors, because this isn't going to show and I'm not going to use this one a lot. And I also grabbed a very, very long needle with a relatively wide eye. That's because this is going to be a little bit difficult to get through unless you have that. So you can certainly use the same needle that you used for your cross stitch, which is going to have a blunt tip. This one does not, because my blunt tip needle for my cross stitch is a little shorter, and I really wanted the length of this one. So that's what I'm going to use. Also, I think I've decided I am going to trim this down a little bit more, so I'm just going to go do that really quick. All right, now I only took out 1/8 of an inch or so, so a little tiny bit smaller, but that's really all we're going to need. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull off some of this embroidery floss. You really kind of need a long, long piece. Okay, and then I'm gonna divide this one in half. So this is a regular 6-strand embroidery floss, and it has already tangled because of course it has. There we go. I am gonna divide this in half. So I'm gonna use 3 strands at a time. All right, so that's separated. Now I'm going to take one of these 2 pieces and thread it. I do that by going over the needle in half. So when you pinch it between your fingers, you get a little tiny bit that you can see, and you just push that through the needle. Then you pinch this on the other side, pull it through, and there you go.
So there you go.
Now, because this is so darn long, I want to basically do doubled so that as I stitch, I can make it a little bit shorter as I go. So I'm just gonna lengthen that so that I have a little bit more manageable length. I'm gonna set that aside for now. Okay, now I want this to be centered, and it's kind of hard to do that because you immediately have to cover it up. But we're gonna start, actually maybe what we do is we measure how big it is, and then we do sort of draw a rectangle. That sounds like a reasonable choice. About 8 inches by about 10 inches, maybe a little bit less. So I want to draw a rectangle about 8 by 10 around here, but I'm gonna do it very, very lightly on the back so it doesn't end up showing. All right, so that's about what it's gonna look like. I'm just gonna do a quick gut check. Is it just me or is that a little crooked?
One eternity later.
No, that's about right. Okay, all right. Trust the process, Kat. Here we go. Okay, so now I have approximately a place where I can stick this in here. And I'm gonna fold this over. And I'm gonna fold that over. And I'm just gonna stitch them back and forth. And this is why we needed such a long piece, because we're essentially mounting it on here. Oh, you know what else I forgot to do is knot my thread. I promise I've actually sewn things before. Oh boy. Okay, and it doesn't really matter how big your tail is because it's not gonna show at all. There we go. And the beauty of this is that it doesn't matter what it looks like at all. This is never gonna show. So your goal is to just make it so that it stays put inside the frame. That is the entire goal here. All right. Now you want to pull it so it's taut, but not too tight, because you really don't want to pull too much on the cloth. You just kind of want to get a decent zigzag pattern going here. Would a thimble help? Yes. Yes, it would. Did I choose to use a thimble? I did not. I did not do that. Lessons may have been learned on this day. There we go. All right. I'm gonna keep going, and I'm just pulling the cloth with this hand just to keep it nice and taut and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, I'm just gonna knot off. So I'm gonna hold this, put the needle through, and I'm gonna hold right here while I pull on this side. Okay, now that's tight. I'm gonna put my finger on it and then pull on the needle side. And that makes it nice and taut and nice and snug next to your fabric. So now I'm just gonna poke myself in the finger, then weave it through and trim my thread. Okay, the next part is kind of tricky because I'm going to do the same thing going in this direction with these sides folded over. What makes it tricky is that this part gets kind of bulky and it doesn't fit into the frame very well. So I'm going to trim off some of this, but not enough that it causes fraying along this corner. I want to make sure that there's enough still folded in that it's not going to cause a problem. But I do want to trim down here next to my board to give it a little bit less weight. So if you can see the difference, this is a lot thicker than that, and this is what I want. Now when I stitch it down, I'm going to make sure that I pull this in and stitch it that way so it doesn't hang out here and get in the way of my corners and my frame. I'm going to go ahead and trim all 4 corners. You can also do this inside a ring, and I will show you like one of the cross stitch hoops, and I'll show you an example of how I did that as well. And I am going to switch it out. I'm not going to use this thread. I know it feels very wasteful, but I'd rather have one continuous thing than have to knot off multiple times. So I'm just going to use the other half of the thread from earlier, or floss. Okay, we're going to remember to knot off this time. So the way that I do that, I take my needle and I pinch it in my non-dominant hand like that, and I want to make sure that the pointy end is facing away from my hand holding the needle, so it should be facing towards my dominant hand. The eye of the needle should be facing towards my non-dominant hand. And I take the thread, smooth it out as I go till I get to the end. Then I take the end of my thread or floss and I take the loose ends and I put it parallel to the needle, and then I pinch it all together. So the needle is the same way as it was before, and the ends of my floss or thread are pointing in the opposite direction. So essentially I have a loop. Then I take my end, wrap it around several times. Normally you don't have to do this very much, but because we have very large holes in the fabric, I like to wrap it around a lot, in this case to give me a bigger knot. So the more times you wrap it around, the bigger your knot's going to be. So this is what I want. All right, now I'm gonna kind of fold this in on itself a little bit, and I'm gonna start here, but I wanna make sure that I catch both this layer and that layer. Now, I'm gonna do the same thing over here. And tuck that in a little tiny bit, not a lot, just a little. Make sure that's not gonna get in my way later on. I'm gonna give myself a little bit more room on my thread. Floss. All right, there we go. One thing I do wanna do is make sure that I'm catching this layer underneath of here, especially at these corners, because it will help everything stay nice and taut and secure. Okay, just finishing this up now. Again, I'm gonna just pull this corner in a little bit. Okay, now I don't really want the knot close to the edge here, so I'm gonna pull this in just a little tiny bit. Okay, I'm just gonna feed that through so it doesn't come out. There we go, and cut. All right, there's the fruits of our labor. Not too shabby. Pretty, so satisfying. Okay, now, get in there. Okay, now I'm gonna put this here, and I have to remember which side is up because that will determine where this goes. So this is a hanging for up, that's also up. So if I had a landscape shaped one where this was the top, that's where I'd make sure that this goes. Since this is my top, that's where I'm gonna make sure this goes. I'm just gonna triple check because I have met me. Good. Okay. So here's another example of how you can frame this up. It's essentially the same thing. I think I used just some regular thread. I didn't do the floss for this one. But when I go to hang it up, you just take a little ribbon, tie a bow or a knot or whatever, just make it look kind of pretty, put it around the tightening screw, and then that's how you can hang it on your hook or your nail or whatever you've used to put your hole in your wall. Now I'm going to use my, what are you called? I'm going to use my ruler.